2 places going at once. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come on in. I hope everyone's having a wonderful morning. You can hear my cat. She's chattering at me. I've got my Topo Chico, no promo water. And I've got my cafecito with cinnamon. No promo, definitely not these people. Yeah, got my sunglasses. I'm under the shade. And as you can hear, there's people that, are doing their daily business, feeling the need to vacuum outside today. So we might have some interruptions or, people living their life. That's what happens when we're outdoors. I did provide a little soundscape, hopefully, besides my cat. There's hopefully a little bit of a aesthetic for fountains. And I'm just going to be looking at the book on Internet Archives. So if you see me pick up a big old pad, that's what I'm looking at, just to kind of reference quotes or page numbers, or just to have the questions that I had on Instagram up. And so that post has is kind of like a preview of what we're going to be talking about today. Let me know if there's issues with hearing me. Like if you can't hear me, let me know. Okay. I'll give people a couple more minutes. Let me know if there's sound issues. Okay. It's 10 a.m., so welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us today for California Herbology's Get Lit Outdoor Inclusive Book Club. We're reading Jack London's Valley of the Moon. Jack London is a Central California writer, born in Oakland, California, to poverty and into a diverse neighborhood. And you can watch book 1 discussion on the other live that was before this on both channels, on both YouTube and Instagram. Like I said, we do have people that live and animals that live in this neighborhood, so there will be interruptions from time to time. I apologize. So if you can't hear me, let me know and I'll try to fix the situation. My background is in literature, so I have a bachelor's in literature. I also have a master's in English rhetoric, and I have a master's in educational leadership. My goal with this group is to have fun discussing books in an inclusive way. Whether you're talking about this book or not, that's okay. If you're not interested in topics like abuse, poverty, classism, Marxism, relationship violence, miscarriages, abortion, I guess, taboo topics in relationships and religion. And if those things make you uncomfortable, if you're not really interested in talking about those things, feel free to join us at another time. Or you can just read the book and enjoy it for your own interpretation, not needing to necessarily rely on this discussion to make you feel any way. So I'm just here having fun, and I love talking about books. So I just thought I'd kind of share what I notice about cool books that I read and to include in a community. I also have a degree in social emotional learning trauma. Uh, so I'm a trained facilitator in that area. And with this book club and being outside in the monarchs and my efforts to save the monarch, I have gotten my outdoor educator certification. So that's a little bit about me. And we're also going to talk about book club events that are coming up in June, and make sure that if there's children around, that you have some viewer discretion, because there's a lot of adult topics being discussed in this conversation, but also it's not anything that people shouldn't be aware of or would be taboo to discuss unless you're uncomfortable with those things. I'd also like to celebrate palindrome. So we have a palindrome week this week. Today is May 24th, so 52425. And so with that, we have the affirmation that things that can go backwards can also go forwards. So we notice, we mark the date. So we have a lot of conflict and tension and sounds and women's work happening behind us, which are all topics that we're going to be talking about today. My counselor discussed with me that my homework was to talk about, to do body scans and to really stay focused on my medication. And most recently, I had some issues with that. I had a medical emergency because my body just doesn't really do well with medication. And so it's important for me to talk about my ongoing health issues in relationship to why I have to postpone events, or why I can't do certain things at certain times, or why I have to be in certain places. So I have something going on with my eyes. I don't just wear this for fun. It's because I am dealing with some issues with my eyeballs and light and heat. So being outside, I have to make accommodations for myself. And that means I appreciate the accommodations that you have to make for yourself, and the things that you need to do to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So go ahead and grab a drink, check in with your body with me. I'm going to go ahead and do a body scan, which shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. And then we'll get into book discussion topics, and then we'll have a closing about things that were going to come up. And then if you're interested in this book, there is free versions on Project Gutenberg. You can access it on several formats there. And then Internet Archive is another way that you can access this book. And then I have questions on my Instagram. So there's really nothing for me to send you. You make of this what you will. I know people were requesting me to send them something last time, but I don't have anything to send. It's all here. It's all transparent. It's all here for you to access anytime that you wish to. So with that being said, let's go ahead and check in. For me right now, I have a little bit of sun on my back, so I'm going to try to move a little bit more into the shade. And there's a lot of people yelling today, which is unique, not normal. And behind me is my garden. My squash. I don't know if you can see. Oh, there it is. And so I thought I'd share that, my little scape with you so that you can see we are outdoors. This is not AI. I wish I could get out of the shade. It'll pass in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my arms, relax my shoulders, kind of roll them out a little bit. And I'm going to start at my toes. So what feeling can I identify in my toes? Is there any way I can relax just a little bit more in my toes and my feet and my ankles? Taking deep breaths in and out, listening and noticing the sounds around us as we check in. Noticing and becoming aware of our legs, our knees, our hips, our seat. How can we get a little bit more comfortable? A little bit of relaxation despite the distractions. Checking in with our root chakra, if you're into that. That's our sacred seat where we're noticing, becoming aware. Now noticing in our hips, in our tummy, in our belly button, in our womb area, in our sacral area. How can we relax? Maybe take a drink of water. Listen with intention to our tummy growling. Grabbing a snack. Holding our belly. Thanking our belly and our hips and our tummy for digesting our breakfast and keeping us here. And then moving up to our solar plexus area, our rib cage, our confidence, our knowing, that sunshine energy. And now taking time to notice our heart and our throat and our shoulders and our arms. Sunshine on our backs, sweat dripping down, reminding us to hydrate and be alive. And thanking our body for keeping us cool in spite of it all. Maybe we can now check in with our neck and our ears and our mouth. Taking deep breaths into our nose, out through our mouth. Thinking about how we can relax our jaw and relax the day's stresses away from that area that tends to hold tension. And now paying attention to our awareness in our third eye and our crown. Being intent and aware, bringing relaxation to our eyes, our temples, our eyebrows, the top of our head, and bringing energy from our toes, healing energy from the earth up through our body, surging, healing, spreading as we relax and become comfortable. Things that go backwards can also go forwards. We notice, we mark the date. Drop your arms down to your sides if you can. And with awareness and intention, draw your arms up towards the sky. Going backwards, going forwards, noticing and returning to an awareness. Marking today. Hopefully you feel included and aware, a little bit more relaxed. I'm going to go ahead and take a drink. So for book discussion topics, I'll go by chapters, and feel free to chime in at any time, comment, DM me if you're interested in anything like this. Today we're looking kind of at where we were and then moving forward so that we can continue our understanding of the techniques in this text. So we're continuing on from last time with the idea of dishonesty and the idea of gender expectation. So, Saxon can't be dishonest, but Billy can, right? So he's dishonest to bring honor to their family, but she's dishonest to bring shame to him. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that later, but there's this idea of double standards, right? This thing that applies to her, and she has to be submissive and allow her husband to be the provider and the protector. At the same time, she's trying to help her family. She's trying to keep them from poverty, and he doesn't see it like that. He sees it as, what does it look like superficially if you're helping us, right? Versus Mercedes Higgins, they don't care in their relationship. Her husband allows her to bring home money if she needs to, how she needs to, do what she needs to. And we see that other people who don't feel like they have an equal representation in their relationships also struggle with performance and poverty and keeping honor internally, integrity versus people assuming that there's something, or the idea of societal expectations and norms versus gender expectations and norms. And we look at this through like the idea of feminism and a psychoanalysis and all of those things that make us understand mad woman in the attic tropes, and patriarchal underlinings in texts in literature. The interesting thing that this starts off with talking about is clothes, like creating clothes that enhance features. Like, so she talks about all of her creating of garments to cater to her body type has paid off, right? So having custom made clothes or being aware of how to create clothes that fit your body, knowing how to sew, and then also washing. Like Mercedes talks to her a lot about the importance of washing and having the awareness of toiletry, I guess is what they say. And they talk about how like Billy doesn't need to have the intricacies of the toilet. And that's like so interesting to think about. Those things he doesn't need to know about. Those are things that women concern themselves with. And she's trying to sell underclothes, right? Undergarments. And it's this idea of like things that people won't see that are luxurious and but on the outside would seem even more luxurious to people who don't really understand them. I thought it was interesting how we talked about ammonium and women's work, not just for household cleaning products, but also for spiritual cleansing, and how women's work is tied a lot to spiritual cleansing. So sweeping and debris maintenance, all of that is this idea of cleanliness and religion, and it falls on women to maintain that order. Men don't need to know that. It's dishonorable in this sense. Saxon is referred to as an infant woman, whereas a woman who has conquered the worlds of men is a woman more like Mercedes. And after we see this sort of awareness, later on it becomes even more aware for Saxon, and she begins to crave freedom in a way. And she starts to look for an escape in her immediate environment and looks to nature and like the natural order of things, but allowing, natural as far as society expectations where her husband is the provider, she's the damsel in distress, she's the one who suffers without speaking. That's not acceptable in nature. Like everyone participates. So I think that's a bigger trope or a conversation about naturalism and women's connection to nature versus men's connection to nature and where they see themselves in that. Billy sees himself as the center of his nature, whereas Saxon sees herself as a part of nature. We have the idea of empowerment versus disempowerment. Mercedes empowers Saxon to take accountability for herself and what her gender can accomplish within the norms and expectations, and also loopholes that allow them to kind of work around those expectations. Whereas Billy disempowers her. He confines her into places where these gender norms limit her intuitiveness, her connection to nature. And so I think the world of women, the idea of infant woman, it's not necessarily like she's new in her marriage. She's new to understanding how women acquire power in a society like this. How do they make sure that they're taken care of in a world that oppresses them and doesn't allow them necessarily to have the same and equal opportunity as male counterparts. There's also an interesting connection to salt and salt vats. There's a connection to salt in death. And it's like an ominous warning for Saxon to be afraid of the things men may do with your pretty flesh after you are dead. And this points to femicide and like violence against women. I don't think that this is something that is new, that men are not allowed to work in funeral parlors or to embalm bodies and stuff like that. It's just this idea of being aware of the world of men without talking about that, because that's something that people know of, but that's not something that men are held accountable for a lot of the time. It's just something that society deals with rather than eradicates, if that makes sense. And so we look at this idea of like power dynamics Whereas in a world of women, you have to stop that behavior completely in order to bring honor to your family. But for men, it's like you have to be able to justify it. You have to be able to tell the world why it needs to accommodate for your behavior. And then it can be justifiable. And a lot of times that's through religion and these gender norms and expectations that society places on both of these people that wish to identify as male and female. So there's this continued ominous of like salt vats, marshes, which marshes are places where like salt water comes in and doesn't really like go out. So there's high salinity there. It's a place where a lot of the crops can grow. So it's a preservative, it's a nutrient for plants, but it also is destructive in like the meaning of it, because it's like that's so final and you're trying to preserve a last moment of something. And they call sometimes the valley the salt of the earth, right? But again, be afraid of the things men may do with your pretty flesh after you are dead. Later on, Saxon sees active violence where what happens after people are dead, and as far as like the law is concerned and how injustice is continued, it's institutionalized, it's prejudice, it's racist, and it continues the violence perpetuated in with religion and gender norms and expectations. Moving on, we're going a little bit fast today. I guess we can take a break, huh? Check in with how we feel, because now we're going to get into really heavy topics like miscarriages and abortions, right? When one is in poverty and afraid of the future and really not aware of what's going to happen, the last thing you want to do is be responsible for another person's wellness and health and mental well-being. And it's very scary for a lot of people, especially new parents who live in poverty, or people who haven't had children. The idea of not being able to provide for your child is very scary. I got flies coming out. It's getting hot. So if we pay attention to our body and our awareness, miscarriages happen when women are often in intensely stressful situations. So early labor, aborting something is when there's too much stress and there's not enough relief, and the body has to clean itself out from the toxins that it feels are keeping it from living and prospering. And so when we look at abortion and miscarriage, so first, Saxon wants to go to the doctor, and it's this very, again, a language that is not said, it is just known, which is what we call covert communication, where you speak in codes. And that's much to what we're going back to with AI, because AI is very literal and logic. It doesn't speak, it tries to play on your emotions using logic, but it doesn't understand nuance and symbol and metaphor. It doesn't speak in figurative language. It doesn't understand that nuance, because it's regional and it's class. It's a class identifier as well. So it's very difficult for AI to use metaphorical language that the regular population can keep up with and follow. So it changes so quickly how we use slang, how we use emotional terms, what we talk about emotionally, that AI can't filter that much information and change its algorithm to reflect that, if that makes sense. So what we have to understand is speaking in figurative language is a way that you can protect yourself in systems of oppression. And so throughout history, women speak in codes, and abortion and miscarriage conversations are no different than that, right? So a lot of times we have people who understand that if they speak literally, that men will think something of it, something they don't understand. And to conquer the world of men, you really have to understand the world of women. And somebody mentioned that, I don't know who it was, but they said, like, the person who is best prepared to show you who you are is the person who is under your control. So it's like that David and Goliath sort of aspect, where you're so big and you're unaware of your own hubris that the little people who are watching you in your environment notice things. They notice and they mark the date, right? So Saxon keeps secrets about her wish to abort her child once Billy gets in trouble the first time. He gets in trouble the second time, and it actually pushes her into miscarriage. Now, we don't know if the doctor provided her with a substance, or perhaps somebody, in this book provided her an out, but we know that during the riots in front of her house, or the strike fighting that took place in front of her house, where she witnessed murder and violence at the hands of men who are fighting over opportunities for work. And so she just becomes completely aware of what she's about to bring into this world. And it's the metaphor that I think what Mercedes gives her, of like dogs fighting for like fat scraps. Like like we look at them and we like laugh at that, and here we are watching men do the same thing. They're the context of like scabs and food scarcity and things like that. Like scabs are a blemish on the union, right? They are people who walk across union lines and for striking unions, and they pick up the labor. So it is counter, right? It moves backwards for the union when they're trying to walk off the job, and cripple the financial ability of their oppressor. These people are desperate for their own comeuppance, that they walk across the union line and they take up that work. So they are called scabs because they're a blemish on the union. But people have to eat. And so at some point, even Billy, who hates scabs with a fiery passion, he went to jail to fight one. He threatens the life of a couple other ones. Like, he's like, they're offering me 100. I mean, the number is astronomical, right? It would be like, they're offering me $30,000 a day to do this, to walk across this picket line. I just have to stand there and sit in the car, and they make it so, hey, my cat's going to chase after one of my bluebirds, so I got to get her. They make it so enticing for you to chase that betrayal, for your own family's well-being. These people are out of work. They are foreign oftentimes. And so they entice these people to come in and work, often at a lower wage than is deserved, that the unions are fighting for. And so it's this idea of something unwanted, right? Something unwanted that you have to deal with in society because of oppression. And this is something that men and women both deal with in this text. What's fascinating is at the beginning of the text, there's this Mary talks about Bert, and she says that Bert is swearing and gritting his teeth in his sleep. And then later on, we see that Saxon says the same thing about Billy, that that Billy is doing the same thing. We can look at this as a symbolism of men who are working against class struggle. So they're subconsciously, they're fighting. What are they subconsciously fighting? And so it's the idea of that stress and tension that carries over from the conscious mind is continuing to plague us in our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is that Freudian psychoanalysis theory where we are discussing the motives of people and what drives them to do the things they do. Food scarcity, providing shelter, taking care of your children, protecting yourself in death, having a legacy and not have that legacy be destroyed once you do die, getting rid of burdens in a time of tension and uncertainty. All of these are things that cause people to do things that out of desperation don't make sense. And a lot of times we try to make sense of a world that we've never been a part of. But until we've been on the brink of starvation, on the brink of homelessness, for some of us, we cannot fathom because we have apathetic defaults. So it's a default to say, well, in my limited view of the world, I think this, rather than, wow, I have no idea what it's like to experience that understanding of the world. It must be so difficult to make a choice like that. And before we judge other people and the decisions they make, we have to live in the world they live in. And that's what books provide us. And that's what these characters are bringing to light. And that's why talking about characters and applying them to real life is so fun. So there's also some other interesting predictions here. Tom is the first one to mention that he dreams of a farm life. He wants to go to a farm. And later on in the later part of this chapter, we see that Saxon feels the same way. She dreams of a farm life. I haven't looked up the term Mohegans and what that means, and I'd like to add a sort of a respectful disclaimer to that term. I'm not sure if that is a disrespectful term to use, and I'd like to update in the comments whether or not we should be discussing this term in relationship to context. For example, this is the term people used discrimination wise towards a specific group of people out of ignorance. And now we know better, and it would be willful ignorance if we continue to refer to that name without understanding the nuances and the disrespect that it brings inherently along with it. We're not using it in a disrespectful way. The word itself, historically, in context, has been used potentially for negative references to a certain group of people. So this is the last word that is screamed. There's also imagery of an anecdotal conversation where a person gets 50 years for stealing $2.80 in Fresno, and how this points to classism, because right before that they mentioned how the bourgeoisie, like people in power, can exploit the labor class for $2.80, and nobody goes to jail. But if you and I are starving because we can't make a living off of our wages, and we go and we steal $2.80, we go to jail. And I just watched this show on Netflix. It's called The Pharmacist, and it's talking about just that, like this cost benefit analysis that pharmaceutical companies or drug companies or police officers do, like, better to take your life and show an example, or better to take your life and have the profit for my shareholders than shut this whole system down and my whole livelihood, and I could potentially go to jail for what I've been doing up to this point. It's like this steamroll effect of what we call white collar crimes, and how people like you and me are subjected to laws on the books that people in power and entities in power are exempt from, and they know it, so they exploit us because we're the ones that are subjected to the laws. Their imagery of the dogs fighting for scraps again versus women as imagery of horses, thoroughbreds, trading in, your ribbons for a pair of horses. So it's like trading in your prize fightingness for, a pasture life. And at one point, Saxon notices that her babies are subjected to a different world than a bourgeoisie baby, that her baby suffers so that a bourgeoisie baby doesn't have to suffer. And she finds that very problematic and is almost thankful that she doesn't have a child that has to sacrifice for the bourgeoisie's comforts. They talk about the fallout from the strike fight. So, who suffers, like I said, who dies because of the strike fight? What is the cops' role in all of this? Scabs versus the union versus Teamsters versus unions across the state. What is the role in politicians? Who instigates these fights? Who backs off when accountability is to be had? And even falling on to Billy. Billy doesn't even take accountability. Saxon does. Quietly, she bears the burdens of what her husband has done, but she doesn't make him be accountable for it. She never asks him to think about what he's doing. Okay, so about 20 more minutes. We've got the last section for this, and then I'll talk kind of a preview of what's to come if you're interested. So this is chapters 14 through 19. In this section, Billy becomes abusive towards Saxon. So it's important that we take time to take a deep breath. For domestic violence, people who suffer from domestic violence because of poverty and conditions of poverty, the system of patriarchy that upholds system of violence against women in domestic situations, for all of the men who have to endure abusive situations at the hands of a boss or coworkers or society in general because they are expected to perform as a knight in shining armor. London blames society for Billy's violence against Saxon. He blames the fact that, Saxon's thoughts about this is that Billy has become subjected to the dog fighting that for scraps that the bourgeoisie is imputing on her husband. And so she blames the society and the system. She blames Oakland. She doesn't blame patriarchy. In fact, she makes excuses for patriarchy a lot, but she does blame society for the ills of mankind, which is very Jack London of him to write. And so then we start to see naturalist elements come alive, which we know is going this has pushed them into nature, right? Against society and into nature, where both of them can be their authentic selves. And it's so interesting because Saxon talks about wanting a horse, wanting animals. She craves nature because it is right and sensible. She's thankful that her miscarriage has happened because she has a secret feeling about, how much more difficult this would have been for her, what position she would have been had she had that child. And so she kind of goes through this existential crisis for the first time where she's already trying to escape. At this point, she's trying to escape society, but we know as women that she's trying to escape the patriarchy. And we have to see, is she going to continue doing that? We also see that Billy is really a stagnant character. He really doesn't evolve for us. We hear the same conversations from him over and over and over again. He doesn't really grow as a person and take accountability. He becomes more violent. In fact, he becomes more of an alcoholic. And this is the same thing that Jack London was doing during his troubles, is becoming more and more of an alcoholic, more and more into the escapism rather than the accountability. So you have you have a decision, right? When you're in a moment of existential crisis or pushback against society norms and expectations, do you fall in line or do you go a different route, right? Do you adapt and change or do you fall in line? He seems to just be looping to fall in line, whereas Saxon is growing in her awareness of what exactly is her oppressor. In fact, this is when we see that the sailor boy in the wharf is introduced to her, and she jumps on his little skiff, and they go out looking for food because she's so desperate and so hungry. He talks about his background, again, more of that whole immigration story that California is known for. His family comes from prize buffalo hunters, so more violence against nature, more destruction against mankind. And Billy sees like the same dog fighting, like he wants to be the best, the top, that he wants to stand on top of the most hides. It's not about exploring the inner human like Saxon is doing, taking what you see outward and saying, do I want this or not? It's a lot of males seeing what's outward and saying, I want that for myself. I want something equal as far as my legacy. Look at that power. Look at that destruction. Look at that violence that this person is able to inflict on others. Whereas women are becoming aware, right? It's more of like noticing things and taking mark and finding solutions and finding ways to not suffer in a world who doesn't care about your suffering. So let's take a moment of silence for the destruction of sacred animals. That was an intent to starve the natives, and Jack London, whether he was aware of it or not, wrote this down. So it's important for us to recognize that that is a part of the ugly truth of America. Prize buffalo hunters were a part of the destruction of Native American people in this country. And we must take accountability for that. Along with the themes of immigration, Saxon starts to realize that Oakland is a place to start from. It is a place she has known, the only place she has known, but it's no longer providing for her and her family. It's, in fact, impending violence that she sees all around her. And this is forcing her to go into nature, to get away from society, to make a better possibility for her family. This is literally the story of the immigrant. Many times they've recognized that wherever they're going is a place to start from, where they were raised, the next place that they're going to in their life. All of these are places to start from on a journey to finding something for their family, survival wise. So, a way that their family can survive. There's noir elements continuing to emerge here. Um, We see murder, classism, specters, shadows, secrets, relational violence. We see people emerging from darkness, a lot of shadowy characters, vague descriptions, a lot of people returning to their animalistic nature or escaping the brutality of an animalistic nature for a peaceful setting in nature, a place where you're battling the elements, not mankind. Mankind is who you rely on, you trust to get you through in a world that's against you, not another man that's against you. And Billy and Saxon are ready to trade in the fight against man, right, and money for the fight against nature and survival out in the wilderness. And that becomes an adventure prospect for them. One alarming part is that Billy sells all of his medals and then they like start frivolously spending all their money, partying it up, doing things like last minute big meals and all this stuff. Is it, again, when we look at the systemic relationship of poverty, when people don't have money and they get a little money, it's like instead of saving it and doing something, we're going to indulge in the moment, right? We're going to imbibe, imbue, have fun, Dionysus energy. But wealthy people know that if they just invest and wait on a return on that investment, they could get more money. But because there's this need to survive, this basic animal instinct to survive, money isn't something you're allowed to stow away for a better day. It's something that we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So let's imbibe today. Let's have fun today. And I love the quote at the end. "'Tis them that looks that finds" is the advice they're given. I think, what is it, the old man or somebody they're talking to says, "'Tis them that looks that finds." And then they are off to go camping. And so that kind of leads us to the next phase of our book club. So we're going to be talking about book 3, but let's first check in how we're feeling after that discussion. How's everything going? How you doing? How you feeling? Nobody has written a comment, so I'm not even sure if anyone's here, if it's my computer. So just take a deep breath for the adventure that these two youngins are going to go on, and our own awareness, our own feelings of inclusive in nature. And I'm thankful today for this book club. I'm thankful for water, and I'm thankful for plants. I'm thankful for you, and I'm thankful for the internet for providing this space for us to come together and talk about how wonderful this book is and California history and all of the things that California has contributed to the history of the United States. With that being said, I'm going to go on my own little camping adventure of sorts if you'd like to join me. I'll be in both or Booth Napa State Park. I'm going to go check out Jack London's legacy in that area. I'm going to go to Oakland and look at like the Wolf Lodge and where he stayed, his apartment and stuff, and try to take pictures to bring back for you guys. I invite you to come along with me. I think it's June 9th through 12th is where I'll be up and around that area. So you can stay tuned on the Instagram and other social media, YouTube, other social media channels to find out where I'm at or to see what I'm up to. And I'll have an in-person book club at the Oakland. There's going to be an Oakland Book Club Festival up there. And I wanted to highlight the Black, Indigenous, people of color in this text by participating in the Oakland Book Club Festival, which is highlighting a lot of multicultural authors. And that'll be this weekend. I think it's next weekend. It's May 30th, 31st, and June 1st is that weekend. And I wanted to kind of highlight them and get you to kind of go out there, maybe try to go out there for a book club myself. And then in mid-June, June 9th through 12th, is going to be the exploration of Jack London. So the cultural appreciation of the text and opportunities for inclusive book clubs at that time. So if you wanted to come to the park, meet up with me at an area where I'm reading and talking about the book, going live, you're more than welcome to join me. It's not something where you have to hang out with me next to me. It's just I'm inviting you to these places to explore with me in person. If you want to come and bring yourself and find me, you're more than welcome to. If you want to plan it for another day and read this book with your friends and family and create a little curriculum or a little adventure yourself, that's all I'm providing this for. So again, our awareness, our inclusivity. We're getting lit outdoors today, sitting outside, reading, talking about books, creating community, talking about the environment, humans, the human condition. It's the things that bring joy to my heart, along with saving the monarchs and making sure we're creating an environment that's peaceful for the animals around us and our insects and bugs and all that. So I'll be releasing information about those book clubs. So first weekend of June, second weekend of June, state park exploration that second week, a book club in Oakland, so society that first week, and then going out into nature that second week. And hoping to explore, given my health condition, right, my medicine and everything like that. Just like as a disclaimer, I am dealing with some things going on with my eyes that are causing seizure-like symptoms in me, or dizziness, nausea, and all that. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I had 2 MRIs, and so I am waiting on the results for that. It'll come sometime next week, and then I'll be back in the neurologist's office. But I have a whole team of specialists looking after my health, and I also have nature that is helping me from the inside out, and in more ways than one, to get my immune system back to peak performance, whatever that is. If you are a person that loves books, maybe has a fragile body, loves nature, and is becoming more aware of yourself and your world and your state every day, hit the like, share this with somebody, comment, subscribe, do all the things that create our inclusive community. Let us know you're here. Share this with somebody who might like it. And I will see you the weekend of May 30, 31st, June 1st, that weekend. I will see you live back here or on another social media. Just stay tuned. I will post a video highlight on all of the social media. So if you don't see me, can't find me, don't know what's going on, I'll figure something out to share with you. And yeah, we'll go right into our summer June pollinator series. My hope is to plant marigolds in June. So I wanted to do like a Dia de los Muertos prep in June. And so that'll be something I wanted to do. I'm also trying to raise money to join the Monarch, to buy the certification for a way station, so Monarch Way Station, and that coincides with Pollinator Partnership Week, and that's in June, I believe the same week, June 9th through 13th, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's the California National Parks Festival, which is taking place that same week. I think it's June 9th through 16th, if I'm not mistaken. It's that week. And so there's events all throughout the state of California in the park system. And unfortunately, I'm like in between 2 events up in Sonoma County, but I'm going to try to see if I can find something in Oakland that weekend before and something in here in Central California the weekend after. I'll have information about the nonfiction selection coming up, and this time it's just going to be me offering excerpts and discussions and education because it's our summer nonfiction to coincide with Saving the Bees, Pollinator Week, planting marigolds, planting milkweeds, all of that stuff. So it's going to be more of a nonfiction selection again. And then towards the end of summer, there'll be another fiction selection. So there'll be another book like this where we have worlds with characters, plot elements, and plot themes that we can discuss. So I love doing that, where we go back and forth from nonfiction to fiction, where we're looking at the environment, participating in the environment, and then becoming more aware of our environment through other stories that people have told and will continue to tell. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go ahead and join us for our next events. And I hope to see you either there or here, but wherever you are, I hope that you are getting lit outdoors today. Hope you get lit outside if you haven't, and I'll see you soon. Bye now. Love you guys so much. Mwah. Thank you for being here so much, and have a blessed day. Bye now.